Okay, today's chapter 3 is called Sunday, and I'll just read for 15 minutes, so we might not finish the chapter. But it says, "The moment the bell rang the next morning, Nat flew out of bed and dressed himself with great satisfaction in the suit of clothes he found on the chair. They were not new, being half-worn garments of one of the well-to-do boys, but Mrs. Bear kept all such cast-off feathers for the picked robins who strayed into her nest. They were hardly on when Tommy appeared in a high state of clean collar and escorted Nat down to breakfast. The sun was shining into the dining room on the well-spread table and the flock of hungry, hearty lads who gathered around it. Nat observed that they were much more orderly than they had been the night before, and every one stood silently behind his chair while little Rob, standing beside his father at the head of the table, folded his hands reverently, bent his curly head, and softly repeated a short grace in the devout German fashion, which Mr. Bear loved and taught his little son to honor. Then they all sat down to enjoy the Sunday morning breakfast of coffee, steak, and baked potatoes, instead of the bread and milk fare with which they usually satisfied their young appetites. There was much pleasant talk while the knives and forks rattled briskly, for certain Sunday lessons were to be learned, the Sunday walk settled, and plans for the week discussed. As he listened, Nat thought it seemed as if this day must be a very pleasant one, for he loved quiet, and there was a cheerful sort of hush over everything that pleased him very much, because, in spite of his rough life, the boy possessed the sensitive nerves which belong to a music-loving nature. "Now, my lads, get your morning jobs done, and let me find you ready for church when the bus comes around," said Father Bear, and set the example by going into the schoolroom to get books ready for the morrow. Everyone scattered to his or her task, for each had some little daily duty, and was expected to perform it faithfully. Some brought wood and water, brushed the steps, or ran errands for Mrs. Bear. Others fed the pet animals and did chores about the barn with Franz. Daisy washed the cups and Dimmy wiped them, for the twins liked to work together, and Dimmy had been taught to make himself useful in the little house at home. Even baby Teddy had his small job to do and trotted to and fro, putting napkins away and pushing chairs into their places. For half an hour the lads buzzed about like a hive of bees. Then the bus drove around, Father Bear and Franz with the 8 older boys piled in, and away they went for a 3-mile drive to church in town. Because of the troublesome cough, Nat preferred to stay at home with the 4 small boys, and spend a happy morning in Mrs. Bear's room, listening to the stories she read them, learning the hymn she taught them, and then quietly employing himself pasting pictures into an old ledger. "This is my Sunday closet," she said, showing him shelves filled with picture books, paint boxes, architectural blocks, little diaries, and materials for letter writing. "I want my boys to love Sunday, to find it a peaceful, pleasant day when they can rest from common study and play, yet enjoy quiet pleasures, and learn in simple ways. Lessons more important than any taught in school. Do you understand me?" she asked, watching Nat's attentive face. "You mean to be good," he said, after hesitating a minute. "Yes, to be good, and to love to be good. It is hard work sometimes, I know very well, but we all help one another, and so we get on. This is one of the ways in which I try to help my boys," and she took down a thick book which she seemed half full of writing, and opened at a page on which there was one word at the top. "Why, that's my name," cried Nat, looking both surprised and interested. "Yes, I have a page for each boy. I keep a little account of how he gets on through the week, and Sunday night I show him the record. If it is bad, I am sorry and disappointed. If it is good, I am glad and proud. But, whichever it is, the boys know I want to help them, and they try to do their best for love of me and Father Bear." "I should think they would," said Nat, catching a glimpse of Tommy's name opposite his own, and wondering what was written under it. Mrs. Bear saw his eye on the words, and shook her head, saying as she turned a leaf, "No, I don't show my records to anyone but the one to which each belong. I call this my conscience book, and only you and I will ever know what is to be written on the page below your name. Whether you will be pleased or ashamed to read it next Sunday depends on yourself. I think it will be a good report, at any rate. I shall try to make things easy for you in this new place, and shall be quite contented if you keep our few rules, live happily with the boys, and learn something." "I'll try, ma'am," said Nat's thin face, flushing up with the earnestness of his desire to make Mrs. Bear glad and proud, and not sorry and disappointed. It must be a great deal of trouble to write about so many, he added, as she shut her book with an encouraging pat on the shoulder. Not to me, for I really don't know which I like best, riding or boys, she said, laughing to see Nat stare with astonishment at the last item. Yes, I know, many people think boys are a nuisance, but that is because they don't understand them. I do, and I never saw the boy yet whom I could not get on capably with after I had once found the soft spot in his heart. Bless me, I couldn't get on at all without my flock of dear, noisy, naughty, crazy little lads, could I, my Teddy? And Mrs. Bear hugged the young rogue, just in time to save the big inkstand from going into his pocket. Nat, who had never heard anything like this before, really did not know whether Mother Bear was a trifle crazy, or the most delightful woman he had ever met. He rather inclined to the later opinion, in spite of her peculiar tastes, for she had a way of filling up a fellow's plate before he asked, of laughing at his jokes, gently tweaking him by the ear, or clapping him on the shoulder, that Nat found very engaging. Now I think you would like to go into the schoolroom and practice some of the hymns we are to sing tonight, she said, rightly guessing the thing of all others that he wanted to do. Alone with the beloved violin and the music book propped up before him in the sunny window, while spring beauty filled the world outside, and Sabbath silence reigned within, Nat enjoyed an hour or two of genuine happiness, learning the sweet old tunes and forgetting the hard past in the cheerful present. When the churchgoers came back and dinner was over, everyone read, wrote letters home, said their Sunday lessons, or talked quietly to one another, sitting here and there about the house. At 3 o'clock, the entire family turned out to walk, for all the active young bodies must have exercise, and in these walks the active young minds were taught to see and love the providence of God and the beautiful miracles which nature was working before their eyes. Mr. Bear always went with them, and in his simple, fatherly way found for his flock sermons in stones, books in the running brooks, and good in everything. Mrs. Bear, with Daisy and her own 2 boys, drove into town to pay the weekly visit to Grandma, which was busy Mother Bear's one holiday and greatest pleasure. Nat was not strong enough for the long walk, and asked to stay at home with Tommy, who kindly offered to do the honors of Plumfield. You've seen the house, so come out and have a look at the garden, and the barn, and the menagerie, said Tommy, when they were left alone with Asia to see that they didn't get into mischief. For though Tommy was one of the best-meaning boys who ever adorned knickerbockers, accidents of the most direful nature were always happening to him. No one could exactly tell how. What is a meander? Asked Nat as they trotted along the drive that encircled the house. We all have pets, you see, and we keep 'em in the corn barn and call it the menagerie. Meander. We'll just call it meander. Here you are. Isn't my guinea pig a beauty? Said Tom, proudly presented one of the ugliest specimens of that pleasing animal that Nat ever saw. I know a boy with a dozen of them, and he said he'd give me one, only I hadn't any place to keep it, so I couldn't have it. It was white with black spots, a regular rouser, and maybe I could get it for you if you'd like it, said Nat, feeling it would be a delicate return for Tommy's attention. I'd like it ever so much, and I'll give you this one, and they can live together if they don't fight. Those white mice are Rob's. Franz gave 'em to him. The rabbits are Ned's, and the bantams outside are Stuffy's. That box thing is Demi's turtle tank, only he hasn't begun to get 'em yet. Last year he had 62, whackers some of 'em. He stamped one of 'em with his name and the year, and let it go, and he says maybe he'll find it ever so long after and know it. He read about a turtle being found that had a mark on it that showed it must be hundreds of years old. Demi's such a funny chap. What is in this box? Asked Nat, stopping before a large, deep one, half full of earth. Oh, that's Jack Ford's worm shop. He digs heaps of 'em and keeps 'em here, and when we want any to go fishing with, we buy some off him. It saves lots of trouble, only he charged too much for 'em. Why, last time we traded, I had to pay 2 cents a dozen, and then got little ones. Jack's mean sometime, and I told him I'd dig for myself if he didn't lower his price. Now, I own 2 hens, those gray ones with top knots. First-rate ones they are, too, and I sell Mrs. Bear the eggs. But I never ask her more than 25 cents a dozen, never. I'd be ashamed to do it, cried Tommy with a glance of scorn at the worm shop. "Who owns the dogs?" asked Nat, much interested in these commercial transactions, and feeling that T. Bangs was a man whom it would be a privilege and a pleasure to patronize. "The big dog is Immel's. His name is Christopher Columbus. Mrs. Bayer named him because she liked to say Christopher Columbus, and no one minds it if she means the dog," answered Tommy in the tone of a showman displaying his menagerie. "The white pup is Rob's, and the yellow one is Teddy's. A man was going to drown them in our pond, and Pa Bear wouldn't let him. They do well enough for the little chaps. I don't think much of them myself. Their names are Castor and Pullocks. I'd like Toby the donkey best, if I could have anything. It's so nice to ride, and he's so little and good," said Nat, remembering the weary tramp he had taken on his own tired feet. "Mr. Lorry sent him out to Mrs. Bear so she wouldn't have to carry Teddy on her back when we go to walk. We're all fond of Toby, and he's a first-rate donkey, sir. Those pigeons belong to the whole lot of us. We each have our pet ones and go share in all the little ones as they come along. Squabs are great fun. They ain't any now, but you can go up and take a look at the old fellows, while I see if Cockletop and Granny have laid any eggs." Nat climbed up a ladder, put his head through a trapdoor, and took a long look at the pretty doves billowing and cooing in their spacious loft. Some on their nests, some bustling in and out, and some sitting at their doors, while many went flying from the sunny housetop to the straw-strewn farmyard, where 6 sleek cows were placidly ruminating. "Everybody has got something but me. I wish I had a dove or a hen or even a turtle all my own," thought Nat, feeling very poor as he saw the interesting treasures of the other boys. "How do you get these things?" he asked when he joined Tommy in the barn. "We find 'em, or buy 'em, or folks give 'em to us. My father sends me mine, but as soon as I get egg money enough, I'm going to buy a pair of ducks. There's a nice little pond for 'em behind the barn, and people pay well for duck eggs. And the little duckies are pretty, and it's fun to see 'em swim," said Tommy, with the air of a millionaire. Nat sighed, for he had neither father nor money, nothing in the wide world but an old empty pocketbook, and the skill that lay in his 10 fingertips. Tommy seemed to understand the question and the sigh which followed his answer, for after a moment of deep thought he suddenly broke out. "Look here, I'll tell you what I'll do. If you will hunt eggs for me, I hate it. I'll give you 1 egg out of every dozen. You keep account, and when you've had 12, Mother Bear will give you 25 cents for 'em, and then you can buy what you like. Don't you see?" "I'll do it. What a kind feller you are, Tommy," cried Nat, quite dazzled by this brilliant offer. "Oh, it's nothing. You begin now and rummage the barn, and I'll wait here for you. Granny is cackling, so you're sure to find one somewhere," and Tommy threw himself down on the hay with a luxurious sense of having made a good bargain and done a friendly thing. Nat joyfully began his search, and went rustling from loft to loft till he found 2 fine eggs, one hidden under a beam, and the other in an old peck measure, which Mrs. Cockletop had appropriated. "You may have one, and I'll have the other. That will just make up my last dozen, and tomorrow we'll start fresh. Here, you chalk your accounts up near mine, and then we'll be all straight," said Tommy, showing a row of mysterious figures on the smooth side of an old winnowing machine. With a delightful sense of importance, the proud possessor of 1 egg opened his account with his friend, who laughingly wrote above the figures these imposing words: "T. Bangs and Company." That's what he wrote. Poor Nat found them so fascinating that he was with difficulty persuaded to go and deposit his first piece of portable property in Asia's storeroom. Then they went on again, and having made the acquaintance of the 2 horses, 6 cows, 3 pigs, and 1 Alderney Bossy, as calves are called in New England, so they called the baby cow a Bossy. Tommy took Nat to a certain old willow tree that overhung a noisy little brook. From the fence it was an easy scramble into a wide niche between the 3 big branches, which had been cut off to send out from year to year a crowd of slender twigs, till a green canopy rustled overhead. Here little seats had been fixed, and in a hollow place a closet made big enough to hold a book or 2, a dismantled boat, and several half-finished whistles. "This is Demi's and my private place. We made it, and nobody can come up unless we let 'em, except Daisy. We don't mind her," said Tommy, as Nat looked with delight from the babbling brown water below to the green arch above, where bees were making a musical murmur as they feasted on the long yellow blossoms that filled the air with sweetness. "Oh, it's just beautiful," cried Nat. "I do hope you'll let me up sometimes. I never saw such a nice place in all my life. I'd like to be a bird and live here always." "It is pretty nice. You can come in if Dimmy don't mind, and I guess he won't, because he said last night that he liked you." "Did he?" said Nats, and he smiled with pleasure, for Dimmy's regard seemed to be valued by all the boys, partially because he was Father Bear's nephew, and partially because he was such a sober, conscientious little fellow. "Yes, Dimmy likes quiet chaps, and I guess he and you will get on if you care about reading as he does." Poor Nat's flush of pleasure deepened to a painful scarlet at those last words, and he stammered out, "Oh, I can't read very well. I never had any time. I was always fiddling around, you see." "Oh, I don't like to read myself, but I can do it well enough when I want to," said Tommy, after a surprised look, which said as plainly as words, "A boy 12 years old and can't read?" "Oh, I can read music, though," added Nat, rather ruffled at having to confess his ignorance. "I can't," said Tommy, and Tommy spoke in a respectful tone, which emboldened Nat to say firmly,